Hi sewers and aspiring sewers, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So in today's video I'm going to be teaching you how to make this beautiful joggers pants. So if this looks like what you're interested in, then let's dive into the main video. So we're going to be needing this material here for our tutorial. We're going to be needing about 1.5 yards for this. This is a cotton fabric that can be used for sweat top, that can be used for hoodie, varsity jacket and the likes. So this is also our standard measurement that we're going to be using for this tutorial. So let's get into it. So now when I divide my thigh measurement into two, I'm going to have 13.5. So I'm going to be adding an extra ½ inch, which is serve as my dart allowance. So that's going to give me 14 inches. So I'm going to divide my 14 inches by 2. That's going to give me 7. So I'm going to be marking out a midpoint which is going to be 7 inches, and I'm going to notch that part, and I'm also going to notch the downside as well. So this is where I'm going to be sewing my dart on. After notching the center point of my fabric, I'm going to sew along this line. So this is going to form my dart line. So after forming my dart line, this is what I have, and this is what it is looking like. To arrive at this point, there are different ways to achieving it. So you can either form your darts before cutting your fabric, or you cut your fabric and you form your dart afterwards by adding the dart allowance. So for me, I had already added my dart allowance and I formed my dart allowance. So what I have left here should be about 13.5 inches. Now for my full length, I'm going to be making use of 44 inches. So from this 44 inches, I'm going to deduct my band measurement, which is going to be 2 inches. I'm going to deduct it from the 44 inches, and that's going to give me 42 inches. So from 42 inches, I'm going to be adding 1 inch allowance for folding. So I'm going to be making use of 43 inches in total. Moving on, I'm going to go ahead to measure my flap measurement. So for my flap, I'm going to be making use of 13 inches. But because we're going to be adding a band to this, I'm going to be deducting 2 inches, which is my band measurement. I'm going to be deducting the 2 inches. So what I'm going to measure will be 11 inches as my flap measurement. So I'm going to be marking 11 inches here. The next thing I'm going to measure now will be my hip measurement. So for my hip, I'm going to be making use of 48 inches because this is a maxi pant. So 48 inches, I'm going to divide it into 4, and that's going to give me 12 inches. So I'm going to measure 12 inches. So remember that previously we measured 13.5 as our thigh measurement. So I'm going to confirm if we still have the 13.5 after drafting out our darts. So I confirm that we have 13.5. So the next thing now will be to rule out my pocket measurement. So for my pocket, I'm going to be making use of 7 inches for my pocket length. So from this point here, I'm going to come in by 2 inches. So I'm going to mark my point from that 2 inches, and I'm going to merge my line to meet the length of my pocket, just as you can see in this video. So now we have a slant shape for our pocket. So now we'll proceed to measuring the butt of our pants. For the butt of this pant, I'm making use of 10 inches. I can actually decide to maintain my thigh measurement as my butt measurement so as to make it very, very free. But I decided to just slim it a bit. And I think this was where I got it all wrong, because I came in from one side to measure my 10 inches, which wasn't supposed to be. I was supposed to come in on both sides. But you are going to see where the error is once I cut this out. So now that I've already marked down my point, I'm going to merge my lines together from my thigh to meet my butt. So now I'm sure you can see that at this point I'm already making a very big mistake. But nevertheless, let's continue. So now I'm going to merge my lines to meet with this point, and I'm going to go ahead to cut. Now you can see that the center point of my dart is no longer aligning with what I have at the upper part of my pants. So you can see that one side at the downside is slimmer than the other side, which is totally wrong. Now, since I want to give my ankle measurement a shape, I'm supposed to divide 10 inches into 2, which will give me 5. Then I'm supposed to measure 5 inches from the dart point towards the left and towards the right. So by doing that, this is going to give me 10 inches. So I'm going to merge my lines together just like this pattern in this video. By doing this, I'm going to be having a proper pattern. So at this point, this was when I realized that I had already made a mistake. But whichever way, I decided to cut this out. Guys, so at this point I realized that I was already cutting rubbish and I couldn't uncut the rubbish because I had already cut. The best thing I could do was to finish cutting this and then think of the next thing to do. So after making an error, I have to find a solution to this problem. So you can see that the measurements we have on both sides are actually totally different. So the next thing I'm going to do now will be to lose this part. I'm going to lose out my darts and start again from the beginning. Mind you, my allowance is still intact. So the only thing I'm going to do is to centralize this and I'm going to go ahead to form my darts. So after losing, I'm going to go ahead to form the center point, which is where I'm going to draw my dart from. So I'm going to notch the center point above and I'm also going to notch the center point below. So this is the line I'm going to trace back. So I'm also going to repeat the same thing on the other side as well. So make sure that it is equal. This was the reason why I was saying that you can actually achieve this in two different ways. You can actually draw your darts before cutting or draw your darts after cutting. Just make sure that whatever measurement you're taking, you're adding your ½ inch to it to be able to achieve this. So now we've gotten what we want and this is how it is looking like. So you can see that what we have here is equal compared to the one we did previously. So please, if your thigh measurement is not going to be the same as your butt measurement, make sure that when you want to measure your butt measurement, you make your deduction from both sides so that your butt points would be centralized and it will be centralized towards the that area. Yeah, so let's move on. Moving on, also here confirming my measurement if it tallies with what I initially measured. And from this video you can see that it is actually the same. My butt is still 10 inches just like I measured previously and my thigh 13.5 inches. Moving on, I'm going to be placing the front part of my pants on the back side. So the back side is going to be plain, it's not going to be darted. So I'm going to be placing it like this. Now remember that we took out 2 inches from our pocket area. So I'm going to be maintaining these 2 inches on the back side because it's not going to be curved. So I'm going to be leaving out my 2 inches here. So for my back flap, I'm going to be adding about ½ inch to the flap allowance, and I'm also going to be adding about 1 inch to my thigh and butt measurements from behind. So this is because the back side of every human being is wider than the front, it's curvy than the front. So this allowance is to make my pants very balanced. So I'm going to be adding 1 inch around my thigh to the point of my butt. So once I'm done with this, I'm going to proceed to cut. The next thing to do now will be to cut out my pocket. So for my pocket width, I'm going to be measuring 6.5 and this is going to be on fold. So for my pocket length, I'm going to be making use of 13 inches. This is going to serve as my pocket length. So once I'm done marking out this, I'm going to also go ahead to cut. Now remember that I've already said this in my previous video that whatever part that is going to form the width of your sew-in should be the stretchy part. So whether it is the round waist, the body measurement, the stretchy part should be what is forming your width measurement. And this same thing applies to your pocket as well. So the part that is not stretchy will be the one that would serve as your length measurement. So moving on, I'm going to place my trouser, the front part of my trouser, on my pocket, just like you can see me do in this video. So I'm going to also go ahead to trace this shape out. So this is what we are going to be using as our pocket facing. Now another thing to note is that if you are quite big and maybe you have a big bum, for your flap measurement, for your flap depth, make sure that it is wider than what I used. So I didn't measure my own, but it was about 2 inches. So make sure that yours is about 2.5 inches so that you can enjoy ease around your butt area. The next thing to do now will be to measure my band measurement. So since I have not sewn my pants, I can't say categorically what my waist measurement would be. So I'm just going to be measuring out a random width measurement. But for my length, I'm going to be making use of 5.5 inches. This is going to serve as my length measurement. You can decide to make use of 5 inches, but I'm adding an extra half inch just to be on the safer side. So I'm making use of 5.5 inches. So at this point, I'm done cutting and I'm going to go ahead to sew this beautiful piece. Now, the first thing I'm going to be doing will be to attach my pocket to this side of my pants. So I'm going to sew along this line. Once I'm done sewing this line, I'm going to flip my pocket to the wrong side just like this, and then I'm going to sew this part of my pants. So once I'm done with this, I'm going to turn this part of my pants to the wrong side just like this, so my pocket will be facing me. Then I'm going to flip my pocket just as you can see me do in this video. So once I am able to achieve this, I'm also going to flip this back to the right side. So now you can see that my pocket is facing my flap area. So that's how it should be. It should be facing your flap area. So now I remember that we left out about 2 inches allowance while we were cutting this. So I'm going to be maintaining that same 2 inches, and I'm going to pin my pocket down. After that, I'm going to go ahead to reverse this part of my pant. You can either reverse it or pin this down just like you did for the upper part. But for me, I'm going to reverse it. After that, I'm also going to go ahead to trim the excess that I have here. Now that I am done with this side pocket, I'm also going to go ahead to repeat the same process on the other side as well. So after joining the side pockets, this is what I have. So if you've been following this tutorial and you watched till this point, you should be getting the same thing. Now I'm going to go ahead to seal the downside of my pocket. So you see this part here, I'm going to seal it because this is the downside of my pocket. So once I am able to do this, I will repeat the same process on the other side as well. Once I'm done with the front part of my joggers pants, I'm going to go ahead to attach the back side with the front side. So this same process is what I'm going to also repeat on the other side as well. So I'm going to start my sewing from this part of my fabric, and I'm going to sew straight down. So now that I am done joining the sides of my pants, I'm going to attach the other side alongside with this particular one. So the first thing I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be joining the flap of each, both the front and back. I'm going to be joining the flap. So once I'm done with that, this is what I'm going to have. Then I'm going to go ahead to pin this part down because I'm going to be joining the side, the inner thigh side of my pants. So once I'm able to pin that side, I'm going to come down to the downside of my pants, and I'm going to start my stitching from there. So if you're following me and you get to this point and you realize that both parts are not equal, the best thing to do is to trim the excess parts. Now there are times that you're going to be having excess just because you're working with a stretchy fabric, so it is normal. So once you realize that you're having an excess fabric, the best thing is to trim it off just like I'm doing in this video. So now I'm going to move to the next stage, which will be to work on our elastic. So at this point, in order to get your exact band measurement, you're going to be measuring the circumference of your waist. So at this point, I'm going to be stretching this a bit to fit into what I want. So at this point, I'm getting 24 inches for my band. So this is what I'm going to go ahead to measure as my band width measurement. Remember that we already measured about 5.5 inches as our band length, which on double folds should be about 2.75. So I'm going to go ahead to cut out the band circumference, which is 24 inches on double. That's going to be like about 48 inches. So I'm going to add add half-inch allowance on the different sides of my band as well. So once I have my preferred measurement, I'm going to go ahead to cut. So by calculation, if I add the half-inch allowance I added to the sides, I should have about 25 inches. So that's like 50 inches all round. So I'm going to go ahead to sew the sides of this band. So after joining the sides of my band, this is what I have. On the other side, I have my eyelet fixed already. So guys, I couldn't cover the behind the scene of this because I didn't do it myself. I went out to fix it. So now we have what we have with what we want already. So the distance from the band, from the upper band to the point of the eyelet is about half and quarter. That's about 0.75. Also, from the midpoint to each of the eyelets, I made use of 1 inch allowance. After that, I'm going to go ahead to notch the sides of my band so that it can fit into the joining of my pant. Now remember that we added an extra inch allowance, so the back side is already wider than the front side. So make sure that you mark the center point of your pant as well. So now to attach my elastic to my band, there's no standard measurement. I'm only going to be stretching my elastic to see if it's going to fit into my band. Now, as long as it's able to fit into my band, it's going to fit into the owner's waist. Now, another reason why we always attach rope to any joggers or any pants is because if at all the owner's waist is very slim compared to the hips, then the rope is going to help to hold the waist firm. So after joining my elastic, I went ahead to reverse it severally so that it can be firm. So I'm going to place this inside my band, just as you can see me illustrate in this video. So I'm going to be sewing the other side, this part. I'm going to be sewing it on my machine. So while doing that, I'm also going to make sure that I'm stretching the elastic so it can start shrinking the band. So after sewing this part, this is what I have. Now on my straight sewing machine, I'm going to go ahead to form two different lines on my band. So to achieve this, I'm going to be using the distance measurement of about 0.75 to form my lines. So I'm also going to repeat the same thing on the second line as well. So after sewing on both lines, this is what I have. So I'm going to be attaching it to the main pant. Just because I want my eyelet to fall at the center point of my pant, I'm going to start my sewing from the center point. So I'm going to make sure that the center point is meeting the center point of my pant, and I'm going to go ahead to sew this. So after sewing through my circumference, this is what I have. So I'm going to go ahead to iron this on my heat pressing machine. So this is the result of what I have after pressing on my pressing machine. So I'm going to go ahead to sew the downside. So to achieve this, I'm going to be making use of this taping machine. So what this taping machine does is that it gives me a double stitch, a double line stitch. So that is why I am making use of this. So once I'm done with that, the next thing to do now will be to insert this rope to my waistband. And guys, even with the look of things, you can tell that we're already done with this beautiful masterpiece. So if you watched till this point, this is me saying thank you for always watching my videos. And if you're yet to subscribe, what are you waiting for? Go back and subscribe. So guys, please kindly like, comment and share, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.